Hello, good evening. I'm glad to be with you again tonight. My name is Pastor Paul Berthold, and I'm here to pursue our study in the book of Genesis. We are going to go through Genesis 20, the 22nd chapter. So please try to follow along, and if you're not familiar with the stories, I hate to say stories, I like to say with the events of the Bible, please try to refer to the passages as I give you those verses. In fact, read the whole chapter after that. Okay, today we're gonna start with chapter 22. And the title is The Test of Love and Faith. Because a lot of us heard about Abraham as the father of faith. In fact, in the hall of faith in the Bible, which is Hebrews the 11th chapter, Abraham is mentioned. It's like the author of the book of Hebrews wanted to tip his hat off to all the faith guys of the Bible, those of faith. Not particularly all of them, but to those that were listed, and Abraham is indeed listed there. So what we want to see here is that God called Abraham, and God told Abraham to bring his son with him. Just before we go into this, I would like to, for those who are not too familiar with the passages of the Bible, or a lot of people are not aware of God's love and mercies. A lot of people think of God as some kind of drill sergeant who is there with a whip or with some kind of execution machine ready to strike if someone messed up. Because we all know that not only Sarah messed up when Sarah told Abraham to go to Hagar, his servant, and have a son because she didn't really want to just rely on God's word. But remember that for those who've been following the studies, Abraham also messed up because Abraham went to what's that guy's name? That king. I think that was when he went to Gerar. But he went to the king and told the king that Sarah was his sister instead of introducing her as his wife. God did not respond to either of these as, hey, you done messed up now. Abraham, you've messed up, Sarah, so look, it's over, case closed. But God worked with them, and God, of course, will test his servants and his people. And this is why we call this the test of love and faith, because God is not only going to test your faith, he's going to test your love before he sends you on your way to work for him. If you are one of the chosen, be ready, you're going to be tested. Okay, so what we can see here, the first thing that God told Abraham is to take his beloved son. God knew that he loved Isaac. As a matter of fact, Abraham is waiting on the promise from Isaac. In fact, this is why Abraham sent everybody else away. Ishmael and everybody and everyone else. Although Ishmael was the first son. So Abraham wasn't questioning God, wait a minute. You just told me that in Isaac will the seed be called, talking about Jesus Christ, talking about the promise. So Abraham did not question. So Abraham just took Isaac, and God told him to sacrifice Isaac to him as a burnt offering. For those who don't understand what it is meant by burnt offering, you have what they call libation in the Bible. Libation, which is like where they would take a liquid and pour it in front of the Lord, or where the Levite would do some type of libation. Because some of you are probably accustomed to this. We don't want to go into that right now. But also you have what they call a burnt offering, which means this is going to be burned. In other words, Isaac was supposed to be not only killed but burnt. A lot of people think that God delight or God would take a man as a sacrifice. Well, if you're thinking about this, you are wrong, because the only place where they're still doing that right now are those who are serving other gods. In fact, strange gods, gods that are not the God of gods, the Creator God. There have been many times in the Bible where they did sacrifice children, and they are still doing that now. A lot of people don't realize that. But God never. It's an abomination to God. God wanted just to test Abraham. The devil does not come to you to test you. He came to tempt you, like he did with Jesus in Matthew 4. But God would like to test you. Let me give you a couple of examples of testing, so you can better understand where God is trying to test Abraham's faith and his love for him. A lot of time God is going to test you if it's your son, if it's your daughter, if it's your wife, if it's your husband that you are trying to place above God. God is going to test you, because the commandment from the past in the Old Testament is the same as in the New Testament. In fact, Jesus just broke everything down to 2 commandments: to love the Lord your God with all your hearts, with all your might, and to love your neighbor as yourself. It's the same thing in the 10 commandments. The first 5 talking about your relationship with your Savior, and the last, your relationship with your neighbor. Okay, so what we can see here, Abraham was being tested not only on his love, because God wanted to make sure that he loves him. He would even go beyond Isaac, because he knows he loved Isaac. That's why he said, "Take now thy son, Isaac." God is being very specific. The one whom thou lovest, the one you love him. I know you love him, and I want him as a burnt offering. But of course, like I said, never do that mistake. The only sacrifice that is acceptable, that was ever acceptable to God, was the sacrifice on the cross. That's the only thing that God accepted, because God requires a holy sacrifice. Because as you can see, a long time ago when they used to present sacrifices, like whether it was a sheep, this sheep had to be inspected. It had to be perfect. The sheep could not have any blemish on it. So that's why you see that Jesus was in fact sent through Pilate, and from Pilate to Herod, and everywhere he went, they said, "I found no fault in him." So the only sacrifice that God would accept is Jesus. We were all I could have said that. I don't want to say too strong of a word, but we all became stained through the sin in the Garden of Eden, where the devil tempted Adam and Eve. So there is no way God would accept any human sacrifice. So this, I want you to understand this. So here, Abraham was tested through his faith, because Abraham, according to Hebrew 11, the 19th chapter, the writer mentioned that Abraham's faith accounted that God was able to raise Isaac up from the dead. So here you have a promise. Someone gave you a promise, it's going to be through your son, and now the person is asking you for your son as a sacrifice. And dead means dead. This means it's over. So what the writer is saying in the book of Hebrews is that Abraham knew that God can raise him up. Like even if he's dead, God can raise him up again. So he didn't care. So that's what is being mentioned here in Hebrews, the 11th chapter, the 19th verse. And also, if Abraham was tested through, his love was tested because he has shown God that he placed God above Isaac, above anything else. In fact, he didn't even tell his wife that he was going up there to execute whatever the Lord told him to do. He was not going to mess up. So as we can see here, as a result of that, because Abraham passed the test, God believed now, God knows, God knew from ahead of time now. God is testing Abraham. He wants Abraham to know, look, this is you. And I appreciate it. Because of that, God said in Genesis, the 22nd chapter, 16 and the 17th verse, he said that I sworn. This means I swear, saith the Lord, for because thou hast done this thing and hast not withheld thy son, thy only son. He pronounced some benediction there, some blessings, and he said that thy seed shall possess the gate of his enemies. I know a lot of people like the following verse, the one that says that in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed. But hey, listen, for us who are really following God, who wants all the blessings, we want to be able to reign with Christ during the millennium. So if he promised that thy seed, talking about the seed of Isaac, shall possess the gate of his enemies, and we all know the end, because God tells the end from the beginning, and he tells the beginning from the end. So when you understand and study the whole Bible, you know that even the devil knows. Those spirits, when they see Jesus coming, they scream and say, are you there to torment us before our time? Because they know their time is very limited. They only have but a little time. So here, we understand that Abraham has already passed the test. But let me give you a couple of examples here before we go to the second slide, because we usually have two screens. The first example I want to give you can be found in the book of Judges, the 7th chapter, verse 4. This is when Gideon was about to go into war, and Gideon had an army with him. And God said, these guys, it's too many of them. Bring them to me, and I'm going to test them for you. You're going to be tested. So in fact, Judges the 7th chapter, verse 4, it tells you that God says specifically, I will try them for thee. I will try. Try means tested. Just like Job said that after the Lord is through with me, after he's done trying me, I will come forth as gold, as pure as gold. Sometimes you are tested through the fire. I'm not talking about burning in hell, but sometimes you are tested through the fire. So there are those theologians who believe, like I know one of them specifically, who was going over this study here, trying to explain how God tested those army men, those soldiers, because those who were serving Baal, they had a way to bow down, to lip the water from the river, wherever they were drinking, where those that are serving God would not get into that position. So it was clear for those who knew. It was a clear difference between those who are serving Baal. There is some type of, they have a way to prostrate themselves. So whenever they came to drink water, that particular theologians explained that it is very easy to test. This means if you do not have any faith, you have faith in some other God, you are not going to be selected or chosen by me. So let me now go to the second example, where God also in the book of Zechariah chapter 13 verse 9, where God specifically mentioned through the prophet Zechariah, he said, I will try them as gold is tried. Remember I mentioned about Job here. He said, I will bring the third part through the fire. He said, I will bring the third part of Israel through the fire, and I will test them as gold is tested, is tried. And eventually they shall call on my name, and I will hear them. And I will say, it is my people. They will say, he's my God. So God will test you. So if you are among God's people, if you haven't been tested yet, wait for your turn. We're going to the next screen. The next screen, what people find the hardest among God's tests, through all God's tests, a lot of people find the greatest test is that of the Lord Jesus, where Jesus tells us in Matthew 5, I believe starting from the 44th through the 48th verse, where Jesus said, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. I'm sure that those disciples who've been waiting for Jesus to come as a Messiah, to deliver them from the Romans, those guys, the first thing they would be saying, looking at each other, they would probably say, looking at Jesus and say what? Can you run that by me again? I know a lot of us, that's how you probably respond also when you hear that. Because this is one of the hardest tests, that to be able to love those that persecute you, those that hurt you, to be able to pray for God to open their eyes and get them out of the darkness in which they are. Because a lot of times if the person knew, the person wouldn't have done certain things. This is exactly what Jesus said. Jesus was, his test was greater than all of us. Jesus was on the cross, and just before he was slapped, he was spat on, he was mocked, and Jesus said, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. If only they knew what they were doing. So here, one of the toughest tests is the test of love. You have to have love in your heart because God is love. A lot of people sometimes they cannot tell the difference between the God of love and the God of discipline. God will discipline you. Don't get me wrong now, because the same Jesus who said that on the cross, when he came into his temple and all kind of commercial stuff, business was going on in the temple, he pulled out his whip and he put a whipping on these guys. So don't think as God as some kind of little God or what is it? What do they call that? A Santa Claus. Who is he just to bring you gifts? So God doesn't play, and also he's a just God. So here, just before we walk toward the conclusion, I just want to give you two other tests with Joseph and also Job. Joseph's brothers in Genesis 50, starting from the 15th through the 21st verse. Now, his brothers, they knew what they did to Joseph. They knew that now Joseph was was second in command. He was right after the king. He was the minister. And now Jacob or Israel, their father, just died. So those guys were looking at each other saying, now Joseph is going to finish us up, guys, because of what we did to him. So they spoke among each other and they said, look guys, what we're going to do, we're going to send someone to Joseph saying that just before Dad died, just before he died, he said to please treat us right. Don't kill us. Forgive us. The dad wouldn't say that to someone else. The dad would say that directly to Joseph. But Jacob knew Joseph's heart. He knew Joseph was not going to kill them. In fact, they were surprised at the way Joseph responded. Joseph told them, am I God? Am I in the place of God? He said, what you did, you meant for evil, but God changed it to good for the purpose of delivering many lives. So what I'm saying here, a lot of times your tests, if you don't pass your test, you're not going to see the fruits. But Joseph passed all the tests. All that he's been in jail, where Potiphar's wife sent him, and Joseph has seen many difficulties, but he passed them all. Now with Job it's something that I call unprovoked test, just like a lot of the Christians who are suffering persecution. There are certain things that are unprovoked. Job was doing the right things, and God happened to be boasting about Job, saying, look at my servant, what a righteous man Job is. When the devil came and said, look, of course, you put an edge of protection around him, why don't you back off and let me give him to me for a little while and see how quickly he's going to curse you in your face. And you guys know the story. So what I'm saying here, in case of everything here, your persecutions are part of your test. That's why in the book of James, where James in James 5:11, when he was talking about unprovoked persecution, unprovoked test, where he said, beloved, think it not strange concerning the fiery trial or test, which is to try you, which is to test you, as though something strange happened unto you. When you see these things, those persecution, people are accusing you of stuff, or people are coming against you from nowhere. You don't even understand why. He said, don't take it as a strange thing, because you have to be tested. And also, Peter repeated the same thing in the book of 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 12. So James spoke about those tests as they there to try your patience. So when you see all these things, know that God definitely He's trying to wake you up. He's trying to bring you closer. Okay, in conclusion, some of you may think, well, which one of these two tests harder is harder? Is it the test of love or is it the test of faith? Well, Abraham went through both. So Abraham was tested through the love of his son and God, the love of his son versus the love of God, and he was also challenged on his faith as far as God wanted to make sure that he has faith in him. Like even if I take him, even if I kill him, I can bring him back. So if you are among those that are serving God, if you are numbered among the chosen of God, brace yourself, because you know it's just a matter of time. Your test is coming and you have to pass the test. That's how you get to the next level. God will only get you to the next level when you pass the test. That's what happened to Israel when they reached the promised land. Because they didn't pass the test. He said, okay, since you said I'm evil, I bring your little children here to die in the wilderness. Well, they are going in and you stay in the wilderness. May God bless you. And we'll see you for the next chapter in Genesis, the 23rd chapter.